Hey everyone, I hope you know about this episode because Twitter won't load for me and I can't tweet about it. So here we are.
It's almost like there's ways for people to subscribe to this on several different methods, whether audio or video, Jake. It's a mystery.
You're just sitting there refreshing our Twitter feed, hoping that you can find out when the show starts. Yeah,
yeah, we need to talk to you about several things, if that's the case.
We need to talk to you about that. All right. Well, we made it. We got here. I've had a fun day. I cut my foot open with some glass, and I'm not enjoying it very much, but.
You may be sliding into sepsis at the moment, so
we'll find out. If I get like really delirious like halfway through the episode, there could be something up. We'll find out. We have Mark Panning with us today. Mark, welcome to the show. I'm really excited to have you. I never ever got you on We Martians, and I felt real not good about that. So this is what we're doing next.
It never happened, and my mission's not active on Mars anymore. So,
missed the entire window. Yeah.
I used to work on the InSight mission, and I just never got there. So I apologize for that. But you've got bigger, newer, better things on the horizon. So we're really excited to talk to you about some moon stuff today because we had a moony week, a very moonish week.
Jake coming out with bigger, better things being the moon over Mars. Like, what a tides have turned.
It's all good. It's all good.
They're all planets, man. They're all planets. We love them all.
I like that you call it a planet. I'll die on that hill too.
Yeah, that's a strong position of this podcast.
Yes.
I mean, you can't do seismology on a rock, so
what do we care what it orbits? It's a planet.
This is what I'm talking about. What are we drinking today? What do you guys got? Anthony, you got anything fun today, or Mark?
I actually do. Yeah, I got a thing, Jake. I'm making a gin and tonic, but a long story. A friend of mine sent me some gin, which was Matt Stauffer for all the dev nerds out there. If anyone's a Laravel fan, sent me this Ghost Bomber gin, which apparently. So I live in Pennsylvania, has weird liquor laws. Hard to order liquor to any house in Pennsylvania, I guess, unless it comes from somewhere else in Pennsylvania. That fits our protectionist racket. And this is from like somewhere. This is out from Pittsburgh. Apparently, there was in 1956 a B-25 bomber that crashed in a river near Pittsburgh and disappeared. Per the people reporting this in 1956. So take that with as many grains of salt as you may want to take that with. So. I don't know, Ghost Bomber. I guess that's like a cool like urban legend situation out in Pittsburgh. So I'm gonna make a gin and tonic with this thing. I haven't opened it yet, so I don't know what it smells like yet. But pretty pumped. Yeah. So thanks, Matt.
So I actually have a gin and tonic too. Mine has no good story though. So I was like, I should look up a moon cocktail, and I just like Googled moon cocktail, and the first thing that popped up was New Moon cocktail, and it was the gin and tonic, and I just made it. And I asked zero questions.
Is it you should have at least made a blue gin and tonic for the upcoming blue moon that is overhyped.
Well, it is. I mean, it is Blue Bombay or whatever it's called. But
you made it a green drink though.
Well, so there's lime juice in it, quite a bit, and
a lot if it's that green.
There's triple sec in it too, so I don't know. Well, there's no logic here. What do you got, Mark?
Okay, I've got a drink I'm calling the Unfashionable. It's because
I like it.
I still have to spend the rest of the afternoon writing a proposal, which is actually why I'm growing a proposal beard. And so I still got a full afternoon. So it's basically all the ingredients of my old fashioned, minus the whiskey, which is a little disappointing, but.
But at least I feel like that puts you in enough of a mood for writing a proposal and stuff. Like that gets you in.
Yeah, and I fuse it with smoke, so it's fancy. Like that's really the important part.
I did see that. That was quite the unveil.
Yeah, that was a nice effect. Yeah,
the first pyro on the show.
Yeah,
awesome.
I mean, it's all about presentation. Even if the drink is kind of meh, if the presentation is good, it's all good.
This really is the right drink for a proposal, then, is what you're saying.
You got it. That is exactly
the proposal of drinks, yes.
If it looks good, you should fund it, right? That's it.
I was going to make a different proposal joke, but then you just teed that one up, and I had to go for it.
So good.
I had a whole thing about how you take the whiskey out, and then you get sad, and that's in the right frame of mind. But anyway, that's
so good.
It's all about appearances.
That's really good.
Oh, wow. Okay, cool. Well, moon stuff happened this week, guys.
Yeah.
Who watched stuff? Okay, I guess we only got to watch one in real time, right? So that was fun. But
yeah,
I don't know where do we start with that? Opening thoughts from Mark. So maybe actually you should introduce yourself as to
sure.
why do we care about your opinion about the moon landers? Maybe tell us a little bit about what you do.
Sure.
Yeah.
So so hi, I'm Mark Panning. I'm a planetary seismologist, which I think at the time I was hired, there were 2 professional planetary seismologists in the in the U.S. Since InSight's been around, I think there's probably of the order of 10. But I like to be able to say, at the time I was hired, I was like, I'm one of the 2 best planetary seismologists in the country.
Yeah, I'm at least top 2. Like, I don't want to, I'm not going to say I'm number 1, but I'm up there. Yeah.
I'm up there. So I do seismology on any planet you could possibly put a seismometer on. That's basically my goal. And I spent a lot of time working on the NASA InSight mission on Mars, which is why Jake should have had me on We Martians, but never did.
I'll take it. I'll take it.
And these days I'm working on a project we call Farside Seismic Suite. It's one of the NASA CLPS payloads. So CLPS is Commercial Lunar Payload Services. It's always hard to remember these acronyms. I'm in the wrong line of work with not being able to remember acronyms, but you get the idea. So it's Farside Seismic Suite, and currently scheduled for 2025. We'll be launching on a commercial lander provided by Draper Lab in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and they're going to fly us to the moon, and then we'll just sit on their lander. It'll die at the end of the lunar day, but we'll just keep running for at least 4 months, probably longer, but we're only guaranteed 4 months of funding, and listen for moonquakes. And until this week, I was always telling people that we would be the first seismometer on the moon since the Apollo missions. But that's a total lie now. The lander that just successfully landed, the Indian Chandrayaan-3, does have a seismometer on it. So now I'm going to be the first seismometer since Chandrayaan-3 which is
always number 2
sounding.
Always number 2. Since at least last August,
it's been a long time.
Oh wow! yeah, they scooped you, man. They scooped you.
Yeah,
That's
I'll
how
take
it. You'll be able to maybe use that as some new baseline data, though. I mean, I don't know how easy it is to get your hands on Indian science research data, but hey, you never know.
Yeah, I have no idea how we're going to get a hold of it. I'm definitely going to try. It's one of these little micro machine silicon sensors, and it's
built by Micro Machines.
Yeah, maybe you have to talk real fast.
Yeah, it's like just reading out the info to you really, really fast. It's an audio based. We didn't really want to waste the data comms on the actual data. We just thought we'd put an audio feed of some guy narrating really fast. It's great.
Does anybody remember the Micro Machines guy, or is that just what age?
I don't know. I think that's our demo at least. That feels like our demo. Yeah.
Yeah, there's going to be some diehard Micro Machine fans tweeting us in about 5 minutes.
That's largely our demo, and then there's probably a few people too old to remember it. Never was relevant to their life. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a pretty high frequency sensor, and I'm not sure it's going to see much in the way of moonquakes, but I'm excited to.
Bummer this landed second then, because they could have had some good calibration data with Luna-25 smashing into the moon. That would have been really solid.
some of the best data from the Apollo mission was the Saturn 4B upper stages. They crashed them in and made such beautiful seismograms. So I don't know how hard Luna hit, but
there will be something else crashing into the moon soon enough. Oh, don't worry.
Yeah, don't make the mistake of thinking that Chandrayaan-3 just ended all the failures.
Yeah, now we're good at landing on the moon. Like that one, we finally did
now
it.
we figured it out, yeah.
It took until the 28th crash, and then we were like, no, but now we're over it, okay?
Yeah, I don't know if you saw, but Jonathan McDowell posted a list of like all 50 attempted soft landings on the moon, and he gave it a score. It was gravity 27, Earthlings 23. It's still hard to land on the moon.
Pretty wild.
Jeez.
That's some serious. There we go. This is such a Jonathan McDowell looking website too. I love this website.
Yeah, look at that. User agent style sheet at work there. Oh, yeah.
I'm gonna start distributing custom style sheets for Jonathan McDowell data and just see it when he picks up on it.
Just here. For the love of God, please put this CSS file on your website.
I love this score column too. This is great. Like, this is a great box score. So we're really quite behind.
Well, and it's when I was looking at this list, I realized it, but I didn't actually put it together that this was the first successful non-Chinese lander since 1976. That's big. This is. It also says how impressive the Chang'e landers have been. That they managed 3 successful landings in the last decade when nobody else has managed anything for my lifetime.
Yeah.
That's
and they nailed it on the first one, right? They didn't even. Yeah. They've never crashed one.
Not that I'm aware of.
Yeah. On this list, right. They've never. It was 3, 4, and 5 all landed successfully.
Yeah, because 1 and 2 were just orbiters, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. The trick is throttleable engines. In case anyone was keeping score on that, if you had a column for landers that landed with throttleable engines, there would be a pretty good track record of those, and not so good with the non-throttleables.
And if you look at it, it also looks like a lot of time it's somebody put in fault protection, but bad fault protection. That's you put people put in all these codes to try to say, if something goes wrong, we're going to fix it, but it seems like a lot of times the fix is worse than what they're trying to fix.
It really felt like I'm looking at some of the older ones. Like a lot of them, that common theme was like bad sensor data told it to do something bad. It was just sort of like it just it's not like it just broke. It's just like they got some interesting data that was, what do you call it, out of family, and didn't know how to handle it, right?
This makes the 1202 alarm fairly impressive. Like they got that prioritization right back in the day. So helps that you had some people there.
Yeah, your fault tolerance was the human brain, right? Your fault handling mechanism was the human brain, so it does pretty well sometimes.
Occasionally.
Occasionally. Yeah, well...
and then there's the other one. We didn't even talk about Luna-25 at all.
There's the other one. Do you believe any of the conspiracy theories that it never even, made it? Because wasn't there a whole thing with... Scott Tilley and all of his tracking friends, once it launched, they weren't able to see it at all. There was nothing going on after that. So there's a theory that it didn't actually make it to the lunar orbit and then try and land. It was just never ever. Either it was an empty rocket or it failed immediately after launch.
I have not been keeping up on this storyline side of things.
I hadn't heard that, but those tracking people, they do amazing stuff. We were, back in the InSight days, we wanted to see if we could see when the Chinese lander came in. Because we always looked for signals of anything that either crashed or landed or dropped stuff, and there were no public releases of where they were going to land. There were no public releases of when they were going to land, and there are laws that if you're working with NASA, you can't actually collaborate with the Chinese directly. So we couldn't even ask anybody, because that would count as bilateral collaboration or some such.
That'd be an international
like
incident, or at least
yeah,
a congressional incident.
it would be illegal. So we couldn't do that. But
but you can loudly shout into public at each other. Right.
And basically, we just looked at all these amateur tracker people that were tracking the carrier signal from it, and they accurately predicted all of the birds that they were doing to make the landing, and they said they're going to land here at this time based on the birds they've done. It's a really incredible community.
Well, and Scott is Canadian, so it's perfect.
Yeah.
Like, you can talk to him, you can talk to them.
Yeah,
it's all good.
Yeah, we don't have a great relationship with China either, though. You got to remember
that. Water under the bridge. It was last year.
No. He had some tweet that was just like, as a reminder, like, we didn't see any signals.
I just pulled it up here. If you would like,
yeah.
Can you do a dramatic reading for us?
Sure.
It's like a 3-part. I didn't realize how dramatic he was with this 3-part.
No, it's the part at the end.
I've been asked over and over to share Luna-25 data. There is none. And then a couple more tweets. I ask you to consider, humble followers, when the last time our community of deep space observers missed a lunar mission. Further, I extend the idea that researchers of lunar imaging data should perhaps consider comparison of recent Luna-25 images to existing LRO and other image databases. I love that.
Wow.
I didn't see that third one. Yeah. It got even spicier.
That is really, really good. But why? All right, let's go down the rabbit hole. Why would they fake a mission and then screw up a deorbit maneuver, or this is the weirdest way to kayfabe a failed lunar landing? All right, nobody's going to take me on that one. Let's do this. If you were to fake a lunar mission, Mark, hypothetically, what would you propose as like the way to make it disappear?
For a fake
yeah. If this is the proposal you're working on later, when would it disappear? How would you have it just go kapoof?
Yeah, I mean, I don't understand how you could do it. Like, it's like I said, with the tracking data, if you're transmitting back to Earth, everybody's listening, right? Like they may not get, it could be encrypted. You're not seeing the actual telemetry.
Yeah, it's not stealth. There's not stealth radio communications. It's just encryption.
You can't. These tracking people, they don't look at the telemetry. They're just looking at the Doppler effect on the radio, and so that that's all they need. I don't know how you'd fake that aside from like sending up a smaller satellite. It's like the old joke about the moon landings were faked, but they got Kubrick to fake it, and he was so rigorous that he actually had them land on the moon to get the good footage. So I don't know.
I just don't know if you were gonna fake a lander, why you would miss a maneuver that bad and say that's how our fake lander went out. Like,
well, I mean, okay, so here,
you do it, Jake. What's your theory? Yeah, do it. Come on.
Luna-25 is related to the whole Russia ESA fallout because there was a bunch of ESA stuff on that mission, and Russia very proudly declared after that split that they were going to fly anyway. They were going to be on time. They were going to be like. So what's worse? Something breaks and you can go blame some engineer downstream, or you just straight up couldn't even launch it. Like from a pride perspective, right? There,
but wouldn't you say you were on final descent and then it crashed though? Like, wouldn't you have? Yeah, why did they get 98% of the way through a mission and then say, actually, we didn't fail on our descent to the surface. We just screwed up the maneuver before. Yeah, we like just totally screwed up an orbital maneuver and then crashed into the moon. That's the weirdest one, and maybe that's exactly why it's the perfect one to pick.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
All right.
You know what they did? Here's what happened. They put KSP in front of Vladimir Putin, let him try a lunar landing mission, and however he fucked it up, that's exactly what they did with this Luna-25 storyline, and he just was really bad at his maneuver nodes, and they went, that's it, that's the storyline we're going with. Luna-25 screwed up its orbital trajectory and crashed into the lunar surface.
Yikes.
All right, Jake, I'm tacking this one on to our predictions doc for this year. Will there be LRO imagery for Luna-25 or not? Like, will we find the hole?
That's interesting.
Will Phil Metzger be able to do additional research based on the hole on the moon that Luna-25 left, or is there none?
What's the international symbol for crashing on the moon? It can't be this. This guy would be like,
yeah, well, it's got to be like, and then back up. Like it's not just
an Omni explosion.
Yeah.
Oh dear. Okay.
Will Luna-25 be found, Jake? Where are you at?
I was nice to Russia on my other predictions, so I'm going to say no, and they did totally fake it. I'm going to go a no on that.
Ooh. I feel like Mark's onto something, and they sent a mass simulator instead of a lander, and so there will be a hole on the moon, but it's not.
Just not the right
25.
size.
Yeah, I don't know how we're gonna tell that. It's not like it would have left like a wily coyote hole on the moon. It wouldn't look like that, but yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna go. We'll find something.
All right.
Mark, where are you at? Are you in the know current with Jake?
I was totally unaware of this conspiracy theory before now, and so I haven't had a chance to really digest this. It seems convincing, but I'm still going to say we're going to find something because it just seems so crazy to me. I mean, it's not that it's impossible. And
it's not though. Now I'm getting more convinced. The more time I sit here, I'm like, man, I think they might have faked it. It's wonderful. It's such a if they did, like, because it's just I love this storyline, Jake. I really hope this is true. I hope this is true.
I gotta change the shirt though. I gotta change the name of this to Luna-25 now.
Luna-25 isn't real.
This is the birds aren't real theory of space nerds from now on. This is great.
I gotta say though that means they probably pre-wrote that great press release, the great announcement where they're like, the did not match calculated parameters and ceased to exist. That was planned well in advance. They were excited to say about how it ceased to exist. I like it. I like it. That's art at that point.
It was a great press release. I laughed at that. And then
listen, whatever the case is, Jake, real lander or not, is there someone more in the running for the off nominee of 2023 at the moment? I think this might be it.
It might be. It's up there.
Yeah. It's early. We always declare one in August, and something chaotic happens in October to December. So
something chaotic happens on December 28th. Every time.
2 days after we do the show.
2 days after we do the show, Russia takes the ISS for a cartwheel. Okay, I think we've solved Luna-25. So, Mark, I wanted to ask you, like, all these. You're in this now, and we've got CLPS coming up, and CLPS is like, we've had all these different kind of countries going after this. We've had Israel and India and China and Russia and all this stuff. I think I'm missing one, but
Japan.
And so now we've got the United States come back on their new plan, CLPS stuff. How's that going? Tell us what's up with CLPS. How you feeling about it?
Step one, I need to say I am speaking on behalf of myself. Not my employer, and not the U.S. government, nothing else. I'm just talking, what Mark Panning thinks. Let's be honest. It's scary. The landing is scary.
Why is it so scary though? Like I feel like we had this figured out, didn't we? Like I don't know. Like
it's like self-driving cars. I mean, they're talking about shutting those off in San Francisco now because they keep like blocking emergency vehicles and things like that. It's all of the individual ingredients are easy. Like you can program everything there. It's just you have to have all the software that accurately detects everything and feeds it all in and does it all at the right time. And it's hard. And there's just one little mistake and ground is unforgiving. So orbits, like orbiters, they go up there and you make a bad burn, it went a little bit long or whatever, and you just correct the orbit It's
sometimes. Sometimes you don't.
I mean,
yeah.
Sometimes
you cease to exist. Yeah.
Sometimes you cease to exist, but most of the time, if it's a small error, you're in the wrong orbit. You fix it.
Yeah. You come around again and you catch it the next time, and
it's just the ground doesn't let you fix it. So there's no room for error. So it makes it frightening. I mean, I'll say it's really the CLPS program is really interesting from the point of view of the scientists working to build the payloads, because normally, for InSight, we, the scientists, we were working with JPL and Lockheed Martin and all of this to build the whole thing together and go through everything together. The payload and this lander were all just, integrally connected the whole way. It's like it's and so all the feed back and forth is all very clear because we're building it together. And then for the CLPS program, by the time the lander was selected, we'd already been through what they call the critical design review and everything. So our payload was set. We couldn't really change anything at the time the lander was selected. So anything that was happening, it's on the lander to fix that, and it's that makes it stressful. It's workable. I mean, the team at Draper has been great, and they we meet with them all the time, and it goes great. But the stress of landing. I mean, by the time InSight landed on Mars, JPL and Lockheed Martin related missions, it felt like it was automatic at that point, right? They knew how to Mars. They were, they could try all sorts of crazy different landing things and it would work. And it just felt like a little scary, but I wasn't really all that concerned,
confirming Jake's conspiracy.
Yeah, I'm feeling very proud of my whole take on this now. The JPL guy wasn't even worried about it, so there you go.
I mean, there's always. I was actually more worried at launch, and maybe that's just because I went to Vandenberg to watch that launch, and that was the most depressing experience ever because it was just marine layer all the way. Like there's fog and you can see about this far in front of you, and it's like. Anyway, I was nervous then. But,
you heard more of InSight than Scott Tilley heard of Luna-25, so that's good.
Yeah,
at least you knew that something was happening.
Yeah, there was nothing to see, but you could hear like a.
Yeah,
that was there.
Maybe Russia just had a bunch of sound speakers up on the hills there in Vandenberg.
That's why they put the marine layer there. They fire up HARP, they put the marine layer in, and then they fire up the speakers, and we're good to go.
Yeah, I don't know. It's so interesting that the Mars stuff seems to have kind of worked itself out, at least for JPL and Lockheed, right? But there's the extra complication of an atmosphere there, and you would think that the moon should be right down to the last minute. You can calculate all of your exact parameters, precisely that you can burn once, and then 30 minutes later, to a meter, know where you're going to land, right? It's pretty crazy. So I don't know.
Yeah,
maybe it isn't.
It's all ballistic, right? So if you've got your engines modeled perfectly, you should be able to model it all exactly correctly. There's none of this uncertainty of atmospheric patterns. But obviously it's not easy.
Do you know where you're going to land yet, or is that not figured out yet?
Yeah, no, it's right here. I don't know if you can see.
Does that clear it up, Jake?
That's
Farside is half the thing. So what is that? What is?
I can't follow my finger here. Damn it! That little star right there is in Schrodinger Basin. That star is at 71 degrees south latitude, and I don't remember the longitude, but I can look it up.
Doesn't matter. It's close enough to write South Pole in an article.
Yeah, so this is this is the Schrodinger Basin. It's on the edge of the South Pole Aitken giant crater, and it's got this nice little peak ring structure, and we're just outside the peak ring structure on the north edge of the basin. I always tell people it's a beautiful crater, and people look at me like. It's like, no, it's really good looking.
I was really curious to see, and I want more pictures from Chandrayaan-3, but like starting to get that far south, like what do the shadows start to do with your nav software? Because like they're real crisp shadows, and they're long, and you start to get like this weird kind of like stripy, situation on the ground. And I'm really curious to see whether that makes it, real hard, I guess. But I mean, I know they're incorporating that in the design, obviously, but it should be interesting to see.
Well, Mark's thing doesn't need a camera, so
no,
but he doesn't care what the shadows look like.
It does need the lander to have a camera.
Yeah, that's true.
The lander has cameras. There will be cameras. There'll be pictures of where we end up. That's absolutely.
I think this is the only picture so far, Jake, of the.
Yeah, I think so.
On the surface, so.
It doesn't look too bad there because that's kind of flat, right? So
yeah, but it looks like a weird picture. Like, what's going on here?
It looks like the moon. I mean, it's always. It's whenever you see, like, after China's last landing, they had the descent thing, and it just kept zooming in, and it was just. It messed with your mind because it just. You kept zooming in, and it was the same thing over. Like it's like that.
It's like fractal.
Yeah, it's like that old. There's that old. I'm gonna say GIF because I think it should be a hard G. It's that old GIF that goes around that. It's like you're zooming in on a coastline, and it just keeps picking that coastline over and over again. It's just fractal crater upon crater. So, you can take a distant image of the moon and just crop it and say, I'm on the surface now.
Take note, Luna-25 team.
That's for Luna-26.
Yeah. This is all the Chandrayaan imagery that we got down to the surface. So, but you're right. Like, the lunar scale is so hard generally. I've seen a couple images where they'll actually mark or like overlay, an Earth map, so your brain has something to work with in terms of distance, and that kind of stuff's been helpful. Of like, what city can you fit in this crater is occasionally helpful for my brain. But yeah, I mean, this just looks like a bunch of
you just
moon
keep
going by.
You just keep zooming in, and it's just craters and craters.
The holes look the same size as the giant craters.
Yeah.
You're like, wow, that's a really nice view from 300 kilometers altitude. Oh no, we're landing. Oh yeah, huh? That's nuts. Are you guys like? I guess I know you're not on the lander team, but just curious of what you're kind of seeing. Like, are you incorporating like lessons from all these kind of recent missions into what you do or what the landers do?
So I guarantee you they will be. I'm not speaking for them or anything, but so the interesting thing about our particular lander provider is compared to some of the recent activity on the moon. Our official lander provider is Draper Labs, but it's a sprawling partnership, and the actual lander design is a company called iSpace USA. And that name may sound familiar to you because the recent Japanese lander that it landed like 100 meters above the surface and then proceeded to continue down and crash. That lander was iSpace Japan, same company, just incorporated in Japan versus incorporated in the U.S.
Right.
And I'm not 100% sure on this, but I believe Draper worked on the GNC software for that lander, and it's just kind of the same team but shuffled around for the CLPS lander to keep the CLPS program happy that it's a U.S. provider, I suspect. Yeah. But that's
which is huge because, like, I mean, no, but honestly, like, all the legal stuff aside, there's obviously historically been some weird stuff in CLPS. Like, now I'm gonna forget the name of this company. Orbit Beyond? No, that's not right. What was it? Is that the company? The company that existed and then didn't exist anymore because like some shady stuff was going on.
That sounds right.
I don't know. That might be a fake name, but there was one like that. But I mean, this situation, like they got a rep in already.
Yeah.
Before your thing's flying,
exactly.
which is great.
And they're actually, there's iSpace is doing so they in the iSpace press releases, they say they have 3 missions, M1, M2, M3, and they're calling the Draper lander M3.
So there's another one in there somewhere.
M1 was the one that failed earlier, and M2 I think is supposed to happen next year, so in 24 sometime. I'm not sure on the exact date, but so they're, I'd like to optimistically think that means they'll have worked out all the bugs and our lander is gonna just smoothly set itself to
nail it.
I'm there with you because that's honestly my biggest worry of the CLPS program generally is that the structure of it means that companies don't necessarily know that they have a couple of landers in line. So like even Astrobotic, right? They're gonna fly Peregrine sometime, and then they're flying no more Peregrines. That's the one Peregrine. And then they're doing all their other landers, which like, there's some stuff that they'll carry over between these platforms, but there's a ton of different things. And knowing how many things can go wrong when you try to land on the moon, there's like, until you're landing the same lander a bunch of times, I don't know if you're going to feel fully confident. And even then, I don't know that you're going to feel fully confident, but being able to get a couple reps in is important. And there's not many of these companies that actually know that they will have a couple of reps on these lunar lander missions.
Yeah, I like the idea of CLPS. I mean, I like the idea of encouraging, the risk taking. So this is somewhat inside baseball, but the risk posture and the development or the payloads is very different than what it is if you're doing a flagship NASA mission or something that. I could throw out all these, 7120.8, all of these like NASA guidelines and stuff that are involved here. But it basically means that, when we're building Farside Seismic Suite, we can do things like use commercial parts instead of the expensive, giant space qualified parts. And automotive standards are actually really rigid, really rigorous, and they make tons of them, so they're actually pretty reliable parts. But they wouldn't be technically space qualified, and it would be hard to fly them under a normal NASA mission. But they let us do it for this CLPS mission because it's all viewed as a higher risk posture. They're willing to let more risk slip into the process.
That's cool that they do that on the payload side. I don't think I really thought about that. I knew that was kind of happening on the lander side, but the payload side too. That's really interesting to hear.
Yeah, so that's it opens up, and it also means that we're building the payload for Farside Seismic Suite for a tiny fraction of the cost of InSight. Right. I mean, admittedly, we're not supplying the lander here. We're just doing the payload. But, since our payload is, it has its own comm system, it has its own power system, has its own command and data handling system. I mean, it's basically, a small sat without propulsion. So we've got all these.
Which used to just be called a small sat, for the record. Like, that's the propulsion part's pretty new, so you're right down center line on that.
Yeah.
Does that?
I love it.
If you're game, I'd love to pull back the curtain a little bit on like how you got to where you're at with this particular mission. And we hear a lot about the CLPS lander side of things, but not a ton about getting selected as someone that's going to fly a payload on this mission. And there's the NASA payloads, but there's also another bunch of commercial payloads. Set those aside for now. From your end of things, like what was that process like to actually get this payload to a spot where it got slated on a lander? And did you just get a letter one day that said, like, here's your ticket, you're flying on this lander, or were you more involved with the process than that?
No, it was a proposal process. It's just in many ways like it's a miniature rapid fire version of how you propose missions like InSight, right? So like those are big missions, discovery. There's these discovery missions, New Frontiers missions. There's this whole system in NASA for proposing big missions. They had a program called PRISM, which is an acronym that stands for something that I don't remember. I'm not even going to attempt it, but it was called PRISM, and those of us who were wanting to try to fly instruments to the moon, we applied to it, and put in the proposal, and they did the selection just like how they do it for missions. So when they do one of the cool things about this is when they do the announcements of missions are funded and everything. They have the big announcement, but ahead of time, they call all the PIs, the principal investigators for all of the proposals, and they tell them, either you're selected or you're not. And so that's, the day before or a few hours before or something like that. So I got to, wake up that day and be like, they're going to call soon. And I was all set up for disappointment. I was 100% sure we weren't going to be selected because, to be honest, our proposal was kind of crazy because at that point, everything was, the lander was only going to survive the lunar day, and the way the proposal was written, the call was written, is they assumed people would use lander power, do everything, rely on the lander, and of course die at the end of the lunar day. And so that, that was, and we were sitting here going, we don't have to do that. We can make a system that, we just sit on top of the lander and we have our own power, we have our own radio, and we'll just communicate, we'll just keep going. And I thought there was no chance they'd think, that was selectable. I thought they'd think that was crazy. But apparently they liked it, so we got selected, and I got the phone call, and they said, called and said, you're going to fly to the moon, and I just ran around my house, screamed a few times.
who makes those calls? Like, is it a big head, or is it like a secretary or something?
It's it was one of the NASA associate administrators called. So pretty high up the food chain.
Pretty,
yeah. Yeah. So
how you can take a guess? Yeah.
So it was unexpected, but pretty darn exciting.
Yeah. Are there?
You must have felt like Swiss cheese right before that call came in. It's nothing, Jake. You got one of those? Anything? Nothing.
No, I'm staying neutral. Okay. Are there a lot of payloads? Like, isn't there like an onboarding process? Like, don't you have to like get into like a group and then you get assigned a slot after? Is it like that for the payloads? And is there a lot on that list?
There's been different ways the CLPS landers have been handled. So the before PRISM came along, I think we're going to be something like the 6th or 7th lander. I've lost count exactly, and then there's issues of bankruptcies and blah blah blah. So I don't know exactly where the number is these days.
Could be the first.
Yeah, who knows?
Still in the running. I wouldn't count it out.
Yeah, but for the first set, there was a call that was basically they put out a proposal call, and it just went to the NASA centers, and they said basically, hey, do you have anything on the shelf that you could fly on one of these things? I mean, that was more or less what it was. It was something that could, the budget was like pennies, and and the idea was just, you've got something you could stick on a lander because we'd like to fly some science while we're, the main point at that point of CLPS was we want to encourage the commercial lunar landers, but we'd like to be able to do some science too. So they said, okay, what do you have on the shelf, basically? And then there was another round that was similar, just said, but it was open to, researchers outside of NASA centers. And from that, they just made a list and they were assigning them to landers. So that was the first part. And then Prism, there's now been 3 calls on that, and those have been, so we were told propose something for ours. It was propose something for Schrodinger Basin. So we knew they were planning a lander to go to that, and we had to make a case for why it would be interesting to send our particular payload there.
Right.
Which I'll be honest is why our thing is called Farside Seismic Suite. I'm not very original in naming, and I didn't want to come up with a clever name, and I was like, the call had all of this information about how it can't be site agnostic was the words they used. So they didn't want instruments that could just fly anywhere. They wanted instruments that really wanted to go to Schrodinger Basin.
This is amazing. Yeah.
They wanted and
you're just white labeling these things at this point. Yeah, I built 10 of them, but this one in particular is meant.
And you're like a seismometer doesn't care where it is.
Yeah. So when I saw that, I was like, it's a seismometer. Of course, it's site agnostic. I'd like to put a seismometer anywhere, but I was like, we've had seismometers on the near side before, and there's this open question about whether we've ever.
Does it even exist back there? Who knows what's back there?
The interesting thing is we've recorded moonquakes all over the near side and only a very tiny bit on the far side. And there's questions on how much of that is due to where the seismometers were. Of course, they were all on the near side, and so it was easier to see things on the near side. But their events should have been able to propagate from the far side. So it's either that there's something deep in the mantle that's blocking, that's attenuating out the seismic waves, or there's actually fewer events on the far side. And there are differences between the near side and the far side. They look different. There's a lot more heat producing elements near the surface on the near side. So there could be differences in structure all the way down. And so made a case that, it's worth having a seismometer on the far side because this is a really big question that we don't know the answer to. So I was like, I'm going to put that in the name that we have to go to the far side.
I love
good.
That.
Putting it in the name, and they also required it to be an instrument suite, which means more than one instrument. So we flew a broadband seismometer and a short period seismometer. So I put suite in the name because it's a suite. Otherwise, they might say, "Well, they're just 2 seismometers." It's like, but no, it's a suite.
It's a
seismometer.
Sweet.
So the name is entirely just like I was worried they wouldn't think we would qualify, so I just put it in the name that we qualify.
This is bringing us full circle to the first segment of this show.
Yeah, this is good proposal stuff for sure.
So good.
It's so interesting, like the whole. I mean, okay. Aside from whether the landers work or not, one thing I find really interesting about this program is that this is a whole very different way to pick science because, like you said before, you would kind of have a handful of instruments that were tightly coupled to the mission. We're talking long project times, long lead times. Getting a PI position on one of these things is generally a career thing. This was the mission or the instrument that I got to be a PI of, and that went to another planet, and that's your thing. But with all these flying and having 6, 10, 15 payloads, I don't know how many are on there, but quite a few payloads and that many, there's going to be a lot of instruments going there, and I feel like this would give a kind of an opportunity for scientists to pitch 3 or 4 and maybe even get more than one. And then also just sort of the way that NASA can kind of be we got another ride, so let's grab the next 6 or 7 that look good. That one. Okay, let's go. And it's it's very different. And I'm kind of curious to know how you feel about that as a career scientist, and whether that's a welcome change or if you're nervous about what the implications are or whatever, right?
Yeah, it's a mixture of. I mean, everything you said is correct. It really does, in some sense, democratize the process of getting an instrument on a mission because anybody can apply to this. The resources to get I mean, it's still an expensive process. I'm not. I don't want to minimize that, but it's. Compared to finding hundreds of millions of dollars for full NASA, full traditional NASA missions, this is this is the low barrier to entry sort of system. So it's really exciting in that sense. But it's still a lot of, it's still a huge amount of work. It's just happening a lot faster.
Mm-hmm.
And just that the higher risk level is both exciting and terrifying, right? So, when all of this is said and done, and the launch and landing happens presumably in 2025, I'm not guessing on launch schedules, because that's a fool's game.
Listen, that's what you got on the website. You're covered, because on the website it says launch date 2025 and status future. So
status future.
So you're good. You're covered by this website.
Status future.
Future.
But
wow.
so 2025 rolls around, and we were selected in 21, I think. 20. We were selected in 21. I've spent 4 years of my life, and 4 years of lots of people's life, because I'm lots of engineers are working on this, and all of this work goes in, and if it crashes, that's gonna. And there's always the risk to that, but that risk is undoubtedly higher in the CLPS program than.
Yeah.
It's by definition they're accepting higher risks, right? So I'm not gonna say what percentage chance of landing is at this point, but it's certainly a lower percentage chance of landing than would be acceptable, and an entire bespoke NASA mission, right? So it's still frightening on that sense. This is.
Yeah. I want to teleport into the future. I want to go to 2032, 2033 maybe. And at that point, you're working on your third CLPS payload. And the people today that are working on Dragonfly are just getting started, And yeah. I'm just really curious to talk to those.
Mission too, by the
way. There you go. Okay. So
he's filling his time until then. Yeah.
We're booking you for a show in 2032 to tell us if we could go back to 2023, Mark, and be like, which track did you like better? I'm just really interested to see how those two streams will sort of feed into each other, and what will change kind of long term for me. I think it's really interesting. That's what I'm most excited about CLPS. It's not so much what science is actually going to do or what they're going to land, but just the way it changes everything.
So on InSight, I got involved on the InSight mission in 2008. We got to Mars in 2018. That's 10 years between when I got involved, and that's not the PI of that mission, Bruce Banner, which there's a T on the end, so he's not the Incredible Hulk. He's got a T on the end. Anyway, when he got started working with that, what ended up becoming that back in the early 90s. So the timeline between concept and actually being on that other planet is so long, obviously that Dragonfly is a good example, because it's going to be between when we got selected and when we launch, it's going to be of that same order of magnitude, 10 years, but then it's going to take 7-ish years to even get to where we're going.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's wild.
When we proposed Dragonfly, I had to make a budget. And it's I made a budget that basically went to my retirement.
I was gonna say, you could have a kid the day you got selected, and he could drive you to the landing party.
Exactly.
He could work on it. Yeah.
It's all right, great.
It's a crazy difference in time scale. For Farside Seismic Suite, we were selected in 21. Within less than a year from selection, we'd been through critical design review, which was this big thing where you're saying everything's set in stone. This is what we're building, and it's from here on out we're just bending metal and putting it out there. And so that normally takes years and years before you get to that point. It was 9 months after we were selected.
That's pretty wild.
You know, so
a little bit of whirlwind. Makes me think the Pluto orbiter mission is going to be named after the first PI on the project, like 50 years after they died, and it's the same contiguous project. You know what I mean? Like, there will be 7 PIs on that thing just because of how it's structured.
They'll posthumously award mission names to the people who started.
Keep renaming it. Yeah.
I mean, it's true. I mean, you know, to have a trajectory that can actually slow down and get an orbit around Pluto, you can't do what they did for New Horizons.
I looked it up once.
Right?
Yeah.
You know,
the Hohmann transfer, like, you know, like the normal, like what you would do for Mars, like that sort of like optimal low energy transfer for Pluto is like 70 years or something. Yeah. Like it's not tenable. Like you have to go faster and then slow down a lot more when you get there. Otherwise, it's not going to work.
Although this is an argument for the Micro Machines based data transmission, because 70 years from now we'll be able to understand the Micro Machines guy, but I don't know that all the tech will still work. So I'm just saying, I'm going to submit this to Prism next time, and we'll see if this Micro Machines guy transmission protocol, the MMGTP, that'll be the system that everyone uses for the Pluto missions.
I'll say on that note of thinking about data transmission, I was actually involved in a project where we were arguing that instead of trying to get better and better radio or laser or whatever optical transmission or whatever, just fly a whole this was specifically for Mars, but also thinking about for other bodies, fly a whole bunch of satellites that go in an orbit that is basically like the Hohmann transfer. So you hang out near Earth on one end and near Mars on the other end, and you just get really, really high data rates while you're close by, and you have a great big huge hard drive on this thing. And then when you get back to Earth, close to Earth, you just burst all of that out as quick as possible. It's like the old
Buzz Aldrin is just like
Buzz Aldrin's like, I didn't talk
like cyclers are back. Data cyclers. He's going nuts right now. Buzz, shout out Buzz.
It makes sense. It's like, you know, if you want to send terabytes of data on Earth, it's a whole lot more efficient to put it on a hard drive and mail it.
This is what's the bandwidth of a 747? Whoever wrote that years ago, like that's still an accurate thing, even more so than space.
It's the bandwidth is high, the latency is high, but it still works out for you. You know.
Yeah, we used to make that joke in Canada a lot because the internet data caps used to be really bad in the early days of broadband, like especially compared to the United States. Like you guys were just crushing us in like terms of getting shit done, and so the people were complaining about whatever, and they're like, "Yeah, watch this. I'll ship like a whole hard drive full of stuff from Halifax to Vancouver, and it'll get there faster and it'll cost less." You know, like it's unbelievable how much it costs.
Well,
yeah.
We're at time. Holy smokes!
That's the moon.
We talked about it. That's the moon. Figured it out. Solved.
Yeah, it's on.
Mark, we look forward to your totally faked seismometer mission that you're totally flying. Let us know.
Status future. Yeah.
Status future. Same with Luna-25.
Status future.
Luna-25 is status past.
There's gonna be great data. You know, it's.
You're gonna love my
everybody's
data.
Everybody's gonna love it. It's gonna be amazing data.
It's such specific data too. I'm really excited for the niche of that Farside Suite. Just nothing like it. It's so targeted to that spot that I'm very thrilled about it. So, and I hope you come up with a completely different concept for the next mission going to the North Pole. The North Pole Seismic Suite. I cannot wait for that one as well. It should be great. So. Thanks for hanging out with us. Where should people follow along if they're not following along with your mission yet? You personally or your mission? Anywhere you want to send them in particular?
Yeah, so I still technically have a Twitter X account, but I almost never look at it anymore. So I'm on Blue Sky for those of you who are on Blue Sky. It's just Mark Panning, bsky.social, and you can see there's updates on the JPL webpage. I actually have a website called seismology.space. If you ever get really bored, you can look at that. It's a little
URL,
but it is
a great URL. Yeah.
So,
that's awesome. Okay. We're on Blue Sky as well now, Anthony. You can see us at offnom.com. So we got the handle hooked up to it. So identity verified, blue check for free on Blue Sky. And it actually means something. So that's pretty good. So check us out there. Because I can't get Twitter to load still. I don't know what happened in mine. So this might just be it.
I can't get Blue Sky to load at the moment. So
okay.
All the Twitters don't work anymore. Yes. There's 800 Twitters. They're all failing at the same time. It's great. What a great world we live in.
Well, Mark, thanks so much, man. This was awesome. I'm really glad I didn't get you on We Martians, but we got you here, and this was a lot of fun. So
it was definitely fun. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, for sure.
See y'all next week.
Bye.
What are we doing next week? Do we have a thing next week? No, not yet.
No, we don't.
Not yet.
We don't.
That's
We're going to let the show come to us.
You'll find out. It'll be great. Don't worry.
We'll find out.
We got it. Yeah. We totally got it. Everything's fine here. We'll see you next week. Bye, everybody.
Or you'll cease to exist.
We'll cease to exist. No better way to end it. See ya.